Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of The Mistake Zone, your weekly dose of our lives and the mistakes within them. My name is Jaren Wade. Joining me, as always, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt Alda. Hey, Matt.
Yo.
How many hats does Hugo own?
Ooh, probably a lot. No, you know what? I like it better that he only owns one. That he picks it
Of
up
course.
after every opening.
Matt, I know we were trying to limit the Zenless Zone Zero talk, but those leaks, those drops.
Why are you guys trying to limit the talk?
I like me a good leak Reddit, but you've heard him as well. Also joining us this week, another one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Rakush.
I'm so tired, you guys.
Oh, man.
Hey, Rakush.
What up?
How do you rate the Shohei Ohtani Fortnite skin?
Oh, God. I mean, it exists.
Damn, Rakush. Rakush,
What's up?
who's the next sports icon to make their way into Fortnite? No, sorry, not make their way into Fortnite, to have their souls stolen by Epic Games.
Is LeBron James in the
Yes.
game yet? Of course. You didn't even let me finish the question there. That was amazing. Man, I don't know. Like, there's really, like, maybe Victor Wembanyama from the Spurs, but I feel like that might be, like, 4 or 5 years away.
Fair. Rakush, are you putting your wagon to this cart of he's the next big thing?
I really want him to be the next big thing. Like, that guy has such a cold-blooded mentality. Won't get into the documentary a lot, but there is an interesting one on Netflix called, I think it's Court of Gold or something like that, which is, it takes a look at 4 of the teams at last year's Summer Olympics, including USA, Canada, Serbia, and France. And Wembanyama looks amazing. All of these guys looked amazing. The NBA needs to do way more of these kind of documentaries because, man, these guys have a lot of character that is not being harnessed yet. So, yeah, I think he's up there. I think he's showing up soon. Hopefully they get, like, the health situation sorted out with them. But, yeah.
Rakush, you dropped the Olympics. Matt, shout out to our quality Olympic coverage last summer. Shout out to Phil Wizard. But, boys, speaking about wizards, you know what game, to my knowledge, doesn't have a wizard?
What's that, Jaren?
Monster Hunter Wilds. Boys, does Monster Hunter Wilds have a wizard in said game?
I mean, you can be a wizard at the game, you know?
But we're not
Fair.
wizards.
Okay. Matt, are you playing with one of those power gloves if we're talking about video game wizards?
Amazing.
Oh, like the Nintendo Power Glove?
Yep.
Ooh, man.
How would the Nintendo Power Glove translate to Monster Hunter Wilds?
Oh, man. Probably very poorly. You know, I'd actually be very interested in playing Monster Hunter like Wilds with the Connect or something over like a Power Glove.
Fair. Boys, we have to check in. Monster Hunter Wilds still continues to be a beefy boy game, but gotta admit, I haven't been authorized to hunt for the past week, so I need to live vicariously through you friends. So, Matt, as I'm still guessing the one of the 3 with the most hours under his belt, how have your adventures in Monster Hunter Wilds progressed over the past week?
They've been pretty good. You know, I've reached I guess like me and Rakush, I guess, have both reached the end game of Monster Hunter Wilds, and you know, we're just on that parts treadmill. You know, making incremental incremental upgrades to all of our stuff, and you know, ever so slightly changing our gear, ever so slightly optimizing everything, and you know, it's back into end game Monster Hunter for me.
Okay. So Rakush, you've entered the end game. What are your general kind of vibes towards the end game right now, and how do they kind of compare to your time with Worlds previously?
Yeah. So I would say like the most end game I've played is actually with Rise and Rise Sunbreak, where
Okay.
I felt like they had enough things, especially with the arena stuff, to keep you going and like, you know, figure out what weapon to get. There is I'm sure they'll add more monsters to this game where it feels like you simply cannot defeat them without like a very specific build with the buffs and stuff like that. I don't know if any of the monsters that we fight in this game necessarily kind of provide that challenge just yet. Or
Hmm.
maybe I just kind of got lucky, for example, with the Artian weapons, which I know, Matt, you wanted to talk about in a little bit as well.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like, I think the end game started for me, honestly, just only a couple of days ago. Like, finally got through all the story stuff, so now it's literally just whatever I want to do with the game, right? So, it's Matt, maybe you can speak on this too, but like,
Hmm.
I'm not quite sure what is motivating me to continue the grind after the story is
Yeah.
done.
Yes. I feel like this point in particular, the um first end game when a new Monster Hunter releases is always a very awkward spot because kind of with the way Monster Hunter has always worked, this isn't actually the end. So Capcom can't really put the actual, end game grind here.
Yeah.
Um and I also, have always found this to be a very awkward spot because like, once you get to the end, this ending where you don't have any title updates yet, it is just the fresh version of the base game. You really do have to find things to do for yourself here. In particular, I think especially with the way that they ended Wilds, which is that there's only really one or two high tier monsters to what do you call it,
To
to
hunt,
hunt.
and as it's in the name.
Hmm. And the ending is like very RNG dependent in terms of weapons.
Yeah. So, okay, I think that's let's jump into that one, right, Matt?
Hmm.
Because like I do think I want to talk about sort of how much of a RNG slash I don't want to call it gotcha. I don't think it's gotcha. Let's say RNG element there is to the Artian weapons, where
Yes.
um we know that the drops are usually percentage based, right? Like there's a certain odd, for example, of like when we were hunting now in Raidao, I needed the Fogger Talon. I looked up the
Hmm.
numbers. You break one of the wings, it's 100% drop.
Hmm.
Or like, it's an 18% carve if you don't break the wings or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So typically you know what kind of like a grind you're getting into. But
Yeah.
and at the very least, like you also know what kind of weapon you're building towards, right? So like there's a very clear goal, there's a very clear end game to those things as well, where like as soon as you get into it, it's like, okay, I know I need to build this dragon weapon, and I know I need these parts. So we're gonna be hunting this monster over and over again. Whereas
Hmm.
like the way the Artian weapons works, that system is that it's randomized drops, and the drops. I mean, it's a higher amount of randomized drops depending on which tempered monster that you're fighting. There's like just sort of like they cycle through it in the game time, basically like as you progress through the maps or as you fast travel and stuff like that. Like even if you rest up and like fast forward the time, it will reset the monsters on the map. So it's also
Hmm.
not like a set instance. So sometimes, like for example, um, you might be looking for a specific creature, but that creature's not popping up. And so yeah, like it is a very sort of random element to it. There is a little bit of a undefined approach to it. There's no
Hmm.
real, because it's a new system, the Artine weapons as well, for this game and this franchise. It is not something that has a very definitive guide either. So like, people are just still kind of figuring it out. And yeah, like I don't know, it just kind of feels a little bit random in a way where like the end game now all of a sudden feels slightly aimless.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like the way that they did Artian weapons compared to, I guess, the what's it called? Oh, Saji, like the Saji weapon. I can't remember the monsters from them. The Saji weapons at the end of World
Yes.
and the Anomaly weapons at the end of Rise. Is a lot more RNG based, but I do expect it, with more title updates, with whatever their Iceborne / Sunbreak equivalent is going to be. It's going to become even more refined down that
Yeah.
way. But in the state that it's in right now, I am very, very iffy on it. Because like the way it works, like Rakush said, is like, oh, certain monsters are gonna have certain drops or a certain drop type, and this drop type is just like Artian crafting materials, basically. And once you get it, they're kind of identified as you pick them up, or there can be like a disc, a tube, a device, or a blade. I think those are the only 4 categories. There might be more, but I think those are the 4.
I think
And
so. Yeah.
yeah, and every weapon is made through a combination of those, and then you can further upgrade those weapons with a randomized table or randomized upgrades. Sorry.
Yeah, and those upgrades are kind of like upgrading your weapon or armor. Like you do need specific parts which you get as drops from tempered monsters. So like that shard, the blood is it called the bloodstone shard or something like that, which drops from focus attacking the tempered wounds, which are like the blue glowing wounds. Jaren, I don't know if you've gotten to that point in the game yet.
I haven't, but it
Fair enough.
sounds overwhelming already.
Mm-hmm. And like, I think the real weird thing to me is that you can't. Okay, so once you craft your Artian weapon, it is like a thing where like, okay, this is just like the base weapon, and then it's gonna have 5 upgrade slots to it, and then you are able to upgrade these slots by spending the metal that you like get from the oil town. I can't remember, Azuz.
Yeah.
And like every single time you do an upgrade, it sets one of those slots to, oh, you get additional sharpness on this weapon, or additional element, additional raw attack, or additional affinity. I think that's all of them. You might get something else. I can't really remember. Those are the ones that like really, really stand out. Those are the ones you're usually aiming for in some way or another. And it locks the 5. Like once you have 5, you can't roll on that weapon anymore.
Unless you like basically break it down and rebuild the item.
Yeah. So in essence, like that weapon is done. And I thought that was very weird. Especially when I was like thinking about the Sagi weapons from World. Because World, and I guess technically Iceborne, had a very similar system where you are, kind of just like randomly rolling like these new stats onto the weapon, but they are able to replace slots that you've already
Yes.
rolled.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was expecting for the Artian weapons. So when I saw that, you roll 5 and then that weapon's done and it's either like good or bad, that was a real bummer for me.
I think, yeah, like maybe calling it artificially enhancing the difficulty might be a little bit unfair to what they were trying to do with it, but it does kind of feel like it's introducing an element that is so out of the control of certain players that if you don't get a good roll, you're kind of just stuck in a certain grind, right? But then again, it's a little bit of an aimless grind of like, you're not necessarily certain if you're looking for a specific part. So like, to me, one of like, for example, like, Matt, when you and I played Rise and like, we had to get that Magnum Aloe gem, absolute nightmare, right? Like I think on it and it was a little bit of a traumatic experience. However, I still feel like I kind of enjoyed that whole grind. And I think part of the reason I enjoyed that grind is because it was such a specific strategy behind it. We knew we had to attack Magnum Aloe's head, I think, if I remember, was the highest chance of dropping it. Or something along those lines, right? And so like we knew like there was a certain strategy to it. So it's like, okay, you go and do it, and you go and you also get better at that game as well. Like, you pick, like the way we used to fight Magnum Aloe versus the way we ended up fighting Magnum Aloe was so different, right? Like I was of course a lot more confident in the fights and stuff as well, but like there was a very clear plan of action. And I felt like that was one of the charms of Monster Hunter, is if you planned out a run or if you planned out a hunt nicely right off the bat, you could tell more times than not that you're increasing the chances of success for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And I just don't get that feeling with Wilds. I don't hate that, but yeah, like I do feel like that is a thing.
I do also feel like it is the kind of case of this again being the base game where
yes,
once you are like I guess like quote unquote like a Monster Hunter vet, this point of the game is actually like quite easy.
Yeah.
It isn't until master rank that things become like a pain in the ass. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like at first, I actually was very excited at the new investigation system, where it was, hey, when you're targeting like a specific part, like you can see that the monster is going to drop it from now on. But like I guess like actually using it in practice, while that is very useful and it reduces the amount of time you need to like hunt, I wish it didn't have that like specific like, oh, here is the gem. Like I kind of
Yeah.
like it better
Yeah.
when it's like, oh, here's like a tier 3 item, or like the tier 2 item or the tier 1 item like drop from this monster, where there is still a little bit of randomness there, but it is still like,
It is
it's not
still, like,
absolute.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like there's still, yeah, like I think that the reduction of RNG versus the removal of RNG was a bit strong now that I've experienced it.
Yeah, and I know, like, when we chatted about this game last week, like, there were,
Mhm.
I had different opinions, I would say, as
Yeah.
far as just like, is this game easier? I initially thought no. And Jaren, I don't know if you still hold that opinion of the game, or if it's just a matter of like, you didn't get a chance to play it enough or anything like that. But something I found interesting over the last week is the more comfortable I got with the focus mechanics, the more I realized the focus mechanics actually might have made it drastically easier. And
Really?
Mhm.
yeah, like maybe it's just like the way I was playing Dual Blade specifically. Maybe I just figured out like a good system of kind of like using it or whatever. But I think the focus system, specifically the wound system, um, I think it actually made it a lot easier to track what I need to do against any given monster. It's like
Mhm.
I think that's a big part of it, which was a little bit more of a chaotic element of the previous games. And also, like, I don't I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but I almost feel like adding an aiming reticle to this game has potentially made it a little bit too easy. And what I mean by that is like,
Uh-huh.
for dual blades, you have a couple of moves, right? And one of the big moves, of course, is the Roly Boy one, where you attack the wound, and then like you basically do a rolling attack on the person's back.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, it's a little bit too easy to focus on the wounds. And I don't
Yeah.
know if that's being fair or not. I genuinely don't, because I do think it's a good addition to the game still, and I think it's a
Mhm.
valuable addition if you can figure out the right sort of like cadence to like use the focus mode and aim and stuff like that, which I think I have figured out with this game. So like it feels a little bit easier to me, but I don't know
Mhm.
if it actually is or not. So I don't know. It's a little bit interesting how like just one more week of this game has kind of changed my opinion on some of these things. I still don't think it's accessible, but yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, no, yeah. I think this is the most accessible Monster Hunter, but that doesn't make it accessible or
yeah.
easily accessible.
I think the gameplay is accessible. I don't think the menu and the guides are accessible, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I do think that like having the wound system in this, like the current wound system in this game, really does, you know give you a lot more direction in
Yeah.
battle. Where it's like, oh, before it would just be like, okay, I'm just gonna wail on his tail for a while, and then when that comes off, I'm just gonna attack wherever.
Yeah.
Whereas now, you have a real reason to. I am going to focus, like, this front left leg, because every time, it's going to pop like a wound.
Yes.
And I think, like, especially for dual blades, because I know that both dual blade and insect glaive are two of the ones that benefited the most from the wound system.
I think I agree. I
Mhm.
actually, I mean, playing Dual Blade, right? Like,
Mhm.
I do think I agree with it, because that aiming reticle just, yeah, like it makes it so much
Yeah.
more straightforward for like where
Mhm.
you're supposed to attack and stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like,
It's not even about that, right? Like, I think that like a lot of weapon types use it for, just like increased damage. Like every
mhm.
weapon type is gonna get increased damage from it. But like specifically dual blades and insect glaive very, very much benefit from the wound system, because, they get resources back from it.
Yes.
Yeah, like dual blades, while you're spinning, you're getting all your stamina back basically.
Basically, yeah.
And yeah, Insect Glaive, when you hit a wound, you get back all your insect buffs. Like, and that's huge for, like, I think both of those weapons.
Yeah, it's insane, especially if like
Hmm.
you have the right skills and stuff applied for dual
Hmm.
blades with like stamina surge and constitution and all of those things. Yeah, it
Hmm.
feels a lot more overpowered this
Hmm.
time around. Like I think like when we were playing a couple of days ago as well, I got one of the Artian weapons, sorry,
Hmm.
and I have it like fully gemmed out and everything at this point as well, and I've got like 200 non-coefficient damage. There's a setting you can toggle in the menu which shows you like the actual damage or something like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So it's pretty high. But then on top of that, like I have 240 water damage from
Hmm.
elements, and then I have a 28% affinity on that as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, and we're fighting Raydell, who is weak to
Hmm.
water.
Hmm.
So like, it's the first time where I think I got to like an end game dragon in one of these games, and I didn't necessarily have this like feeling of overwhelmingness from the dragon. You
Uh-huh.
know, and I think like maybe it's just like part of it might be the network errors have forced me to have to figure out how to play this game by myself and not just rely on
Yeah.
you for help. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's that, but like it certainly felt a lot more manageable this time around.
Hmm.
Like you
Yeah.
said though, like yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, like I mean, I feel like I'm okay saying this now because it's shitting on past Rakush, whereas you're in an okay place now. But I would always feel like really really bad whenever it would disconnect because I was worried you would get mad at the game because
I did.
you
No,
would
I
you would
absolutely
have a
did.
hard time dealing
Doshiguma,
with the
dude.
monster. But mhm. But like throughout this week of like all the disconnects, I feel less bad that I disconnected because I know that you
Amazing.
can like hold your own.
It's the student has become the master. Nah, it's like
Hmm.
honestly, I was kind of there when like before we recorded last week, I was talking about the Doshiguma fight, right? But then even
Hmm.
that, like it turns out the issue I was having was not necessarily a skill issue, it was a level issue. So like at that point I was still doing 3-star stuff
Hmm.
and that was a 5-star monster. So once you disconnected and I didn't have all the necessary like high rank weapons to really attack it,
Hmm.
that's what the struggle was, right? So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even that, like the frustration was there, but once I figured out why it was happening, it was like, okay, cool. Like now I know I just need to rank up, and that's why, like, I was kind of punching above my pay grade a little bit, so to speak. And like,
Hmm.
yeah, like, I think like definitely has played a role, and like I needed to just figure out how to fight some of these things by myself. But also I would say, there's a lot of things in this game now, 3 Monster Hunters deep basically for me, that because I'm kind of building on a foundation of knowledge from the first 2 games, I can pick up a little bit more of sort of like the subtle differences that say like, Jaren might
Hmm.
not be able to pick up because he's not played those games, right? So like,
Hmm.
yeah, like do I actually think it's easier in contradiction to last week? Yes, but also I'm not quite certain it is easier for like, for a first time player like Jaren, so
Hmm.
yeah. Jared, I know you've been kind of like you took a, backseat to this conversation, but like is anything we're saying making you more or less likely to play this game?
Matt, remember when you said I wouldn't like Monster Hunter?
Oh
Uh-huh.
no.
I'm pretty sure I don't like Monster
No,
Hunter.
Jared. This is
Where
$90.
where you guys outlining the whatever the weapon passives and re-rolling
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
that, Matt, I already do that in another game we both
Uh-huh.
usually play, where um, I think from the little I've been able to play this week, I still stand by what I said last week, where the story mode is entertaining enough,
Hmm.
where I'm still liking the characters, and I still appreciate not only the production, but kind of as you guys mentioned last week, just how they introduce all these other monsters to you, and when you kind of tackle them, how they are getting more spectacular, how they are getting more, bigger and badder, and yet you're still getting glimpses of monsters you're gonna eventually
Hmm.
fight, and I do appreciate that. But I think it's really been enlightening hearing you guys talk about this current state of endgame and what you're kind of building towards. Where um, I'm really curious just to see how the other updates shake out, where the expansions kind of go to. But
Hmm.
um, once I get more free time, I'll still continue along with the story. But I think afterwards, it's when I explore this, new area of um, endgame loop hunts and whatever, where I'll see if I'll dedicate myself to, this a bit more, or to be
Hmm.
honest, Matt, there are drive discs to
Uh-huh.
farm, and I think that's a lot. I don't know. I'm surprised that um, even it's a concept that I'm used to in a gotcha game. So to see it in a, I guess, premium Monster Hunter game is a bit head scratching to me. But maybe this is something I need to see in person just to see how kind of it relates to what I'm
Hmm.
used to in regards to something similar. But man, that's honestly the worst part of any gotcha game. And again, to your point, that's kind of the loop of what you have to do in end game scenarios, whether it be um, kind like a gotcha game, whether that be a Genshin, like a Zenless Zone Zero, or now I guess
Hmm.
Monster Hunter. So trying to see how that
Yeah.
goes, but who knows? Maybe I'll fall in love with another set of armor to work towards and
Yeah.
Hmm.
transmog.
Like
But
something worth clarifying about the whole sort of like Artian RNG element as well, right? Is that you will pick up a hefty amount of them if you fight the right tempered monster. So it's not like there's a lack of opportunities to go and get those parts. It's more getting the right combination of stats, right? So it's like
Hmm.
getting the right element, getting the right affinity, getting the right part type. Like the part type is the less problematic of the three there. But then it's also what Matt was talking about with the upgrades, right? Like that's where it gets a little bit tricky, where it's kind of like
Yeah.
if you don't if you don't start with like a good base, then you're already like kind of at a deficit. But then like there's no real clear indication of what is a good base, what isn't. So like, and maybe that's like not a bad thing when it comes to randomly generated things. Like for example, the Artian weapon I have that I was explaining earlier, I'm happy with it. Would I be happy with it if I were reading a guide online that told me that's actually shit? I don't know, right? So like
Uh-huh.
there is an element of that as
Yeah.
well where it's kind of like it's all a little bit unknown right now. But I wouldn't say it's difficult to get the parts. It's just that you don't quite know how to plan to get those parts. And that's something that is quite different. But yeah, Matt,
Hmm.
like I know you talked about like this is the base game, like it's only been out for a week,
Yeah.
right? So like
Yeah.
we're already talking about like in the next month, like they've already announced that they're gonna be adding a new monster. They're gonna
Hmm.
be adding some updates, they're doing some event quests that haven't necessarily been phenomenal yet. Like one of them is a Kutku, if I remember. But like
Hmm. Gives you a hat,
yeah, it's
but
something,
yeah.
So yeah.
And the other one
So
gives you
it's
cheese. So, you know.
nice. Okay. Actually I might want
Hmm.
to play that one then, because
Hmm.
yeah. The other thing also, speaking of cheese, right? I know this wasn't in our like rundown of the actual show itself, but I know like we talked last week about how the cooking, getting the items for the cooking was a little bit tedious and not necessarily well thought out. Do you
Uh-huh.
still hold that same sentiment after like unlocking all of the different item gathering characters and stuff like that?
Um, I still think that I still am not a fan of this food system where you are expending a set amount of items. In actuality, I can use this system just fine.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna run out of anything I think drastic, but it's that this is a me problem where I have the mentality of, oh, I have like 99 like honey and I don't know, like
Sure.
like 70 shrimp just from
Uh huh.
trading.
Uh huh.
But what if I use too many and then the second I really really need it, it's gone.
Yeah,
And
it's inventory management, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just
No,
like
I
use
get it.
just the rations. But yeah, like I think that's just like personally a me problem, but
I don't, to be honest, I don't know if it's just a you problem. I do think that they've limited the cooking in a way that I necessarily have not liked either, right? So, like,
mhm.
I mean, I don't know if I'd go as far as like you did last week and call it the worst thing, but like,
uh
at least
Uh-huh.
like early and mid game, it was very difficult to get the necessary items to get the necessary buffs
Hmm.
that I needed as a dual blade player, right? Because
Yeah.
there's certain like I believe Drool Shroom, for example, gives you a pretty good buff for like,
Hmm.
stamina management and evading and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
um it was kind of like I knew what kind of meal I needed to make, but yeah, like getting the items is impossible sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's very tedious to get drool shrooms, for example. So it's like you just kind of gotta go with God sometimes, and like
Hmm.
whatever
Hmm.
happens happens. Um,
Yeah.
Although like there is another part of the meal thing that I think we haven't utilized enough, which is that after certain story beats, there are certain characters that invite you for a full
Oh,
meal, which
yes,
actually
yes.
lasts like an hour and a half and has way more
Hmm.
buffs than like, just making a meal by yourself. Which,
Hmm.
if you can time it correctly with like some of your big hunts, then yeah, like, I think
Hmm.
that does serve the purpose as like, the palico cooking your food in the previous games.
Yeah.
But I think like subjectively from like a creative standpoint, I do kind of hate that like you can get that fancy little animation with the cat cooking your steak and like
Hmm.
all of that stuff. It does suck, but like there are things in place. I like in a way where it's like even though we might not like them, I think I can at least respect the fact that I can acknowledge the fact that like the developers clearly knew this would be a thing and they clearly put in different ways of like buffing up as a
Hmm. Hmm.
compromise.
Hmm.
So at least I can acknowledge that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think like okay, I think for me, the most important part of the end game loop is something I kind of mentioned towards the start, where there's really only kind of two monsters that you fight at the end, which are basically Gore Magala and Arkfeld.
Yeah.
And I I think that like these are good monster difficulties in terms of like what I'm looking for in end game-ish Monster Hunter fights, where I guess I was touching on another thing like about like the game being like easy or not, and I guess focus wounds in particular is
Hmm.
that I like the wounds on these monsters because they are one a little bit harder to make and two in more awkward spots. And to also add on to this, I want to add like Jin Dahad as well because I think
Shoots
like
a hut.
this
Yes.
yeah also fits. Like I think those are three very very good end game fights, and I'm really hoping that like the future fights that they're going to be adding are going to fall into that kind of difficulty or
Hmm.
complication. Like these monsters all I think move around a lot. They have like awkward kind of like hit zones. They have weird hits. Like Jindahad has the explosion. I'm actually very surprised that Zoshia doesn't come back in any way to fight.
I yeah, Sharon, how far are you in the story? Like, have you at least gone past the end credits?
Nope.
Okay, so I'll try to avoid some spoilers then when talking about
uh
this.
But I feel like yeah, like those three in particular are like very good. I remember something that you said that when we were playing, which is that you hated how much what's his name? The white the gorilla, the white ape. Blaganga?
Blongonga, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Like you hated how much he moved. But I feel like that's like a critical part in making like a
Yeah.
end game type monster, which makes it a bit more like interesting to fight.
I mean, most of the times I'm griping about those kind of things. It's more gripes, right? Like, I totally
Yeah, yeah,
understand
yeah.
the game design reason behind
Mm-hmm,
those things.
mm-hmm.
It's just sometimes I'll be like, let me hit the wound. And he, like, will spin away, like, 20 feet away from me. And I'm like, son of a.
Yeah,
God, like,
yeah.
just. That's the kind of, like, thing. But I think it's good character design. I do think
Mm-hmm,
so,
mm-hmm,
objectively. And
mm-hmm.
yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, I do hope that, like, some of these upcoming creatures that they're adding in, especially, I think the next one is Mizutsune.
Mm-hmm.
To
Oh,
be honest, I
Misa's gonna be
don't.
crazy for this, I think.
Is it? Do you think so?
Yeah, because like when I think of Mizusune, I think about how much it's going to jump away from you, do its like spin, put all the bubbles everywhere. Like that particular move
Yeah,
that where you have to deal with bubbles, and then the other move where it like starts like drifting and shooting a water laser. Do you remember that move?
I do remember that move. Now that
Yeah,
you
I feel
mention it.
like Mizuzune is gonna be a very like fun fight, especially when it comes to like trying to like land wounds.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where she kind of falls in the kind of like monster rankings, right? Of just
Hmm.
sort of
Hmm.
like, is this an MR5? It's a 6-star fight. I have to imagine it's 6-star because it's like a post
Yeah.
post endgame release.
Same.
But like Mizutsune in Rise to me was not necessarily a great 6 star. I don't even remember if she was 6 star or like a
Misu
lower
was
star.
mid. I think like early mid game is where they put
Yeah,
Mizu in that game. Yeah.
yeah. So that's why I'm like a little bit curious what sort of tweaks are gonna happen to her skill set to make her a 6 star,
hmm
because
hmm
I do think the challenge needs to exist in order for it to be a compelling enough fight to keep doing a couple of times over, right?
Yeah.
But I am also kind of hoping that like that update comes with a few more event things that needs to be done, because I
hmm
am I'll admit like I am a little bit concerned about just kind of like how much I'm gonna be doing the end game grind, because I already feel pretty good with like a lot of the items that I have, right? It's
Yeah.
like you said at the start of this conversation, is just tweaking a few things. I'm just not sure how much
hmm
I need to tweak still, because I feel pretty happy with like the weapons that I have. Yeah, I have not felt the need to get like a dragon damage specific weapon just yet, because the ones I have are like plenty sufficient for what it is we're
hmm
trying to do.
hmm
So yeah, I
hmm
do hope that grind gets just a little bit more intense. As crazy as that sounds, considering like,
Yeah.
what like Jaren has mentioned about like playing this game for the first time.
I mean, that's Monster Hunter, right? Like, once the base game comes out, it's like, oh, this is like, kind of
Yeah.
middling in difficulty. And then once Master Rank comes out, you're like, oh, I hate fighting this thing. This thing is too hard. I want to cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
hmm
I also
hmm
think like a big part of why I'm a little bit concerned about what this end game grind is going to be. It's a little bit cheesy and cliche, but like one of the charms of this game is playing it with friends, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
network errors that we're still facing, like a week into like the release,
hmm
haven't been fixed yet. And so a lot of
hmm
it ends up being a single player experience, which
Yeah.
it's okay. Like I do still like the game and I'm still playing it. We're on Discord when we play, all of that stuff.
hmm
It doesn't have the same charm as like when we're fighting a monster together. And like there's
Yeah.
an added challenge to that as well, because the monster difficulty is also ramping up with the more people you play with. Jaren, I don't know if you knew that, by the way, since you're playing with four people, I think.
Nope, I'm a solo hunter.
hmm
Everyone's too busy,
Fair
so
enough. But yeah, it's like the more people get added to a hunt, the more HP is added. So of course, like it's a little bit more difficult. But yeah, like I do think it's kind of lacking a little bit of that charm that we naturally got with World and with Rise. So I really hope the
hmm
network issues do get fixed soon, because I don't know how much this game has legs if it ends up being a single player experience for me.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking forward to hitting like a wall monster again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, as crazy as that sounds, right?
Uh
Because
huh.
like
Uh huh.
I definitely think like the first half, maybe 2/3 of this game are a little bit challenging. But then like you get like your first high rank like weapon, and then you start building out the armor that like you need for certain skills and stuff like that. And that's where I think the game becomes more well, the game becomes a little bit easier, I would say, because you finally have a lot of the end game weapons. I just don't feel like the monsters are balanced enough in a way that like it feels difficult at the end. But I
hmm
do think like they did a good job at the early parts of the game, kind of like introducing you to a challenge, because I
Yeah.
did feel like all the monsters had a unique sort of challenge to them. It's just yeah, like I feel like it doesn't ramp up as much after like 2/3 of the game is done as I thought it would.
Yeah. For sure.
I think that's it for Monster Hunter for me this week. I don't really have a lot much more to say. Like, was there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I think that was it for me. I know I could probably like drone on about this for a lot longer, but I feel like we would just be revisiting a lot of topics we already hit.
I think so. And I feel like we covered a lot of just sort of like corrections from last week and like new experiences. Cause like we did,
hmm
like I'm at like 37, 38 hours in this game now. I think you're at like 3 times that because Matt lets you.
hmm
um, but yeah, like, I think like we played enough at this point to be able to very comfortably speak on a lot of the, finer details of this game versus the last games. So I think we covered quite a bit.
hmm
well, boys, it seems like you've gone on your fair share of hunts, but rest assured, friends out there, this will definitely not be the last time you'll hear about all our adventures in the wilds. But it seems for now that we won't be authorized for hunts in the near future. However, Rakush,
Yes.
I'm getting word from the association. You've been authorized, this is unprecedented, to do a Don't Match Me during the middle of a Mistake Zone episode. So, Rakush, please have at it.
That is such a cool transition. You did a great job there, Jaren. I don't think people give you enough credit for doing a great hosting job. I think like the weeks where you're gone, by the way, and like I have to host it, I have no clue what the fuck I'm doing. So yeah, props to you. That's always like a very difficult job.
Rakush, I really appreciate your kind words, but are you just stalling because you don't know how to properly announce the rules of the Don't Match Me challenge?
I mean, you read my mind like a champ. So see, I'm telling you, it's very difficult to be a host. You are a mind reader, Jaren. You have superpowers. Speaking of superpowers, this week's Don't Match Me. It's about comic books. So don't match me. I'm going to try to explain the rules a little bit here, right?
Okay.
I'm going to try. But let's see if I get it this time or not. Don't Match Me is a game where the person creating the game has 5 questions each week. This week, it's me. I'm going to be asking these questions. I'm going to give the answer first. My friends Matt and Jaren are going to try not to have the exact same answer as I do. Hard mode, if you're listening along, you don't want to match with either of us. Easy mode, you just don't want to match with me. So there's 2 different ways of playing this game. Did I do a good job, guys?
Yep.
I think you're you're doing a pretty good job.
Rakush,
yeah. What's up, Jaren?
I can hear how unconfident you are, but you're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting
extremely
there.
unconfident. That's honestly part of my charm. Like a couple of weeks back, I had to do like a presentation at work, and it was like a meeting with the whole department. And typically people skip that call, and it was just the 1 week I had to present. They all showed up, and I just like fully went into self-depreciation mode. It worked wonders. It really went over well with people. Making fun of me is a great shared experience.
Mm-hmm.
But Rakush, you know what else is a good shared experience?
Don't match me.
Not matching you.
There we go. Okay, so this week we're doing comic books. A couple of weeks back, I talked about some graphic novels that I started reading. Something Sailing to Children, World Tree, even read that new Ultimate X-Men book. So it kind of inspired me this week. You know, we don't just want to keep doing a Monster Hunter Don't Match Me. What can I do that's a little bit different? This week, I'm going to do it with comic books. I'm going to try to keep it more indie comic book specific. Funny enough, I messaged Matt a little bit earlier, and I'm like, Matt, you're likely going to need time to look up the answer for some of these questions because it is a little bit super indie. So, yeah, 5 questions. I am going to start it off right away with what I think is the broadest of the questions here. It's a pretty cliched question. But friends, if you had to choose an ability that you think would be helpful for an everyday task, what is that ability? What is that superpower?
Ooh, everyday task. That is a very weirdly constricting not mindset, but it's a good restricting question or a condition.
Because it's like, okay, like you can be like, Iceman, but like, is that actually like good for an everyday task, right? Like, what is your imagination limiting you with Iceman superpowers with? So that's all it is, So yeah, you guys let me know when you're good to go.
Yep, good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna answer this in 3, 2, 1. I'm actually gonna specifically go with instant transmission, which is Goku's move to teleport from one place to another, and I would specifically use it to commute to work.
Ooh, okay.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. You went a lot more superpowery than I did because I went with, I think something that is just a normal person could have. It's just I don't have it. I went with super memory.
Good answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good answer, Matt.
But what would you use it for? What is the everyday task that you would use it for?
I don't know. I just feel like, being able to remember stuff is useful in any everyday task. Like the amount of times I specifically shopping. There's something I need to buy. I also did not write it onto my shopping list, and I go home and I'm like, about to cook, and I'm like, I forgot to get, I don't know, peppers or something.
I'll allow it.
When that happens, Pat.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens.
I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Jaren, what you got for us, bro?
For my power, I went with mind reading or clairvoyancy just because In terms of everyday tasks relating to work, sometimes you might be in a situation where you're negotiating with someone, or trying to complete a task in a group environment. And let's be honest, boys, if you could know what the other person was thinking, might be a lot easier.
Mm.
Or you could be a lot more diabolical, because late stage capitalism is cutthroat, and I hate it.
Jaren, have you considered the concept that if you knew how to read people's minds, or if you could read people's minds, and they're thinking shitty thoughts about you, you'd know that as well?
It comes with the territory.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt, you know me. Rakush, you also know me. I'm a sweet, sensitive baby boy, so gotta have my big boy face up when I read the mind. But when I get home, sad times,
man.
sad
I'm just
times ahead.
imagining Jared in the middle of a work meeting, everything's normal to everybody, and then you're just fucking crying so hard.
Man. Can't let them see you cry, man. Can't let them see you cry. That's for the bathroom stall.
Mm.
Big Jarens don't cry. I'm going to move on to the next question there on that awkward note. Now we're going to get into the more comic book stuff here, okay? So this one now, it's a little bit more open and actually no, let's go with this question next. I want you guys to name an indie comic book label. It doesn't have to be a distributor or publisher specifically, just an indie comic book label. It can also be a defunct one. I'll be honest, I have not read too many comic books recently to be able to tell you what is active, what is not. But it can be a previous one as well.
What counts as a label?
I'll give you an example of one that I was going to use as my answer, and I'll use something else as
like
an answer.
what would be a not indie label?
DC or Marvel. Basically, anything that is
okay.
not DC or Marvel would be an indie label, I would say.
Okay. I literally only know one that isn't those two.
Uh-oh. Okay, I'll go in 3, 2, 1. Guys, I am going to go with Dynamite Comics. Dynamite is the publisher that put out a bunch of hit series for a longest time in the mid-2000s, early to mid-2000s, even into the 2010s, like The Boys, Transmetropolitan. They have a bunch of other series out as well. But yeah, I'm going to go with Dynamite.
Ooh, okay. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, that's like a real pull, I guess. But yeah, those are like, series like The Boys isn't a prime TV show at this point. Transmet, I don't think is a TV show, but it is an interesting one. So yeah. Matt, what's your answer?
I don't know if this is correct. Because the only name that I could really think of that wasn't DC or Marvel was Dark Horse.
I think that counts. Dark Horse does count because they publish a bunch of indie stuff.
I did it.
Nice, Matt.
Dark Horse, also the publisher of Lone Wolf and Cub, for which I'm missing volume 27, friends.
Damn.
One day, Rakush.
One day, soon. Once I can afford it, I'm just going to buy it. I'm not waiting for anybody to get me that.
For my answer, I immediately went to manga, but then I realized that's not really in the spirit.
It's okay, bro. I'll accept it.
Rakush. So I went with, similar to Matt. Matt, I was also going to go with Dark Horse, but I thought, I wasn't sure if that was under. Honestly, for some reason, I associate Dark Horse with DC, so
interesting.
I went with the next best thing for me, the second publisher I know in terms of comics. I went with Image Comics just because I remember Bone growing up, and I remember Image on its spine.
Walking Dead is also an Image book.
Weird monsters, Rakush.
Sorry?
And I haven't thought of Walking Dead in so long.
Yeah. Is that TV show still going?
There's probably 3 spin-offs.
Oh my god.
In addition to the mainline one.
How is it still going? I have no idea. That is wild.
Hey man, people love Norman Reedus. I'm assuming he's still part of it.
Yeah,
Is he still in it?
I mean, what else is he going to be doing?
I don't know. Not Walking Dead. What's the other walking one? The Kojima
Death
one.
Stranding?
That's it. The other one.
Guys, I know this is Rakush's Don't Match Me challenge, but that Death Stranding trailer, the new one?
Ooh.
I need to watch it. I'm curious what that. I don't know. Like I feel like I actually want to maybe not play Death Stranding, but like I might just go and watch like the story mode for it or something like that. It seems very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But moving
Which
on
I
to the
bet
next,
Kojima would be okay with that.
I think he'd be fine with it. Like I call Metal Gear Solid a great game to watch all the time. I did it this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next question, friends. Getting a little bit deeper into the indie stuff here. This one is a little bit open-ended. But name an indie comic author and a series they're known for. If you pick the same author but a different series, I'm going to say it's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, friends. In 3, 2, 1. I'm going with Alan Moore, one of the best comic book writers of all time. And I'm going to go with V for Vertigo. V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta from Vertigo.
Oh.
That's what I meant. Sorry. Mixed it all up there.
Oh, man.
Missed the
Okay.
landing on that one. My bad. Matt, what you got?
I mean, I just went with Brian Lee O'Malley for Scott Pilgrim.
I think that works.
Matt
Uh-huh.
told you we'd pick the same one because I also went with Brian Lee O'Malley for
Oh,
Scott
man.
Pilgrim.
Basic.
Oh,
I see
man.
that Matt and Jaren have matched.
I was
Congrats, friends.
I was considering Archie, but I thought that's like way too popular for it to be indie.
I don't know if Archie would be considered indie, actually. That is an interesting question.
Yeah.
Definitely a water cooler conversation. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, friends, 2 more questions to go here. The next one. Spider-Man has a classic story against a group of villains called the Sinister Six.
Ooh. Hmm.
Name one character from the Sinister Six.
Which Sinister Six?
Any Sinister Six.
Haven't all of Spider-Man's villains been part of a Sinister Six at some point?
It sounds like you can name any of Spider-Man's villains then.
Oh, man. Okay.
You guys good?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
3, 2, 1. I am gonna go with Dr. Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus.
Ooh.
I was like, damn, he has a daughter?
Yeah,
I guess I'm reading that
Listen,
one.
You might. Spider-Man's
Mhm.
daughter might be part of the Sinister Six when, she's going through the rebellious phase.
Mm-hmm. I went with the Insidious Six from the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
Amazing.
I picked Shocker.
Yeah,
Classic.
Mhm.
Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty
I
sure
went-
Shocker was part of it in some comics as well, so you're not far off.
Mm.
I feel like he was part of it in the animated series, or at least the one I think
Yes.
of when I think of the Spider-Man
Mhm.
animated series. But I went with Sandman.
Hey.
Flint Marko, right? That's yeah.
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 You got me, Rakush.
No, listen. I just wanted to flex there a little bit that I still remember comic book stuff. But Sinister Six is cool, guys. I feel like that's like one of the cooler collections of villains
Mhm.
in like a comic book series.
Yeah.
All right,
Or
It's a good
we
name.
can
It's a good
consider
name.
yeah.
the Sinister 60, which has the likes of Lady Octopus, who is this Dr. Octopus's daughter? Maybe I'll look into this later.
Maybe.
Jaren
Maybe.
knows what he's doing tonight. That sounded a little weird, actually. Sorry, ignore that.
Mhm.
Last question. This one's a little bit of a toughie. Name a comic book movie from a non-Marvel or DC franchise. Jaren?
Yep.
All right. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to go with an answer I don't think either of you are going to get, just to make things a little bit easier. I'm going to go with the Tom Hanks movie, Road to Perdition.
I've never even heard of that movie.
It's like an early 2000s movie, probably like 2003 or something like that. It's
Mm.
the reason I remember that one is because I saw the movie before I knew it was a comic book. And once I found out it was a comic book, I'm like, there's no way, right? This is way too normal of a story for it to be a comic book. This is before like I knew what indie books were. So
Mhm.
that's why I always go with Road to Perdition as the answer to this question.
Mm.
Surprisingly,
I mean-
not the first time I've asked it.
All right. I mean, I'm just going with I'm just revisiting an old answer. I just went with Scott Pilgrim again.
Fair.
Yeah, I guess
fair.
Scott Pilgrim works.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, when you asked this question, Rakush, I thought of the movie Sucker Punch, which isn't my answer, but I was disgusted that the first movie I thought was Sucker Punch. Then I thought, oh yeah, Kick Ass is
Kick-Ass,
something I
yes.
also saw in theaters. But I'm not sure why I thought Sucker Punch was based on a comic, let alone why I went to see Sucker. Okay, we all know why I went to watch Sucker
Yeah,
Punch, but
we don't have to lie about that. I mean the director, right? Like I think was it Robert Rodriguez? Like he's
I think
done
it
a lot of
was
comic book stuff.
Zack Snyder who did
Zack
Sucker
Snyder, sorry,
Punch.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of those. Yeah, Zack Snyder, right? Like he's done a lot of comic book stuff, so like it completely makes sense. The other one I wanted to go with was the Kingsman, especially the one where like they basically turned like Rasputin into like a sleeper agent for some secret organization and stuff. That movie is insane, guys. That is honestly all I just want to say about that movie. Please go watch it. The more you watch it, the more ridiculous it gets. It's phenomenal.
Fair. Fair. So,
That's Don't Match Me for this
Rakush
week, you guys.
definitely is. Definitely is. Rakush
Yes.
threw me off on the loop with the last two questions, to be honest, because thought those were gearing towards more indie, but when you dropped the Sinister Six, I thought, okay.
Yeah, you know, I tried, but I did need
Gotta
to
keep
talk
us on
about
our
some
toes,
supervillains,
Rakush.
you know? Yeah. You know what? I'm actually kind of embarrassed by that, you guys. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to leave the show for a little bit to repent for my sins, and yeah, maybe when I'm back next week, you know, I'll have learned my lesson on not to lie to you guys again.
Fair enough, Rakush. Fair enough. Maybe you'll be authorized by next week to
This guy,
rejoin
this guy.
the Mistake Zone hunt.
Maybe.
But
I hope I
Rakush,
talk to you guys again.
before you go on timeout, normally we save this for the end, but who are you thinking this week?
Who am I thanking this week? I'm thanking you for
Yep.
hosting this show every single week because it's not an easy job.
This guy.
You took my usual things. I think of a new one.
Now you gotta think, Matt. Now you gotta think. New
Well-
end game for Saturday Morning Arcade. The Mistake Zone.
Have a few more minutes for Matt to thank, but until then, Rakush, we will
Yes.
see you next week.
Yes.
All right.
Take it easy,
Have
guys.
a good poop. Have a good poop.
Thank you.
All right. Peace.
So, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
we unfortunately lost Rakush during our hunt, but
It's okay. We got rid of the dead wager.
I mean, we are the Saturday Morning Arcade Tag Team Champions, so you know sometimes you need a good turning on your trio's member, but that's neither here or there, Matt. One thing we like to do on the Mistake Zone is, you know, dive into the latest Steam Next Fest demos. And
Yes.
I know we talked about Monster Hunter a lot this week and last week, but prior to its release, we did see the latest Steam Next Fest grace the front pages of Steam. But Matt, I have to be honest, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go that hard on the Steam Next Fest demos this time around. Not to say I didn't jump in, but I feel like I ended up wish listing, aka bookmarking, probably 30 to 40 games just based on kind of recommendations. But to be honest, I only played a handful of them. And I kind of wanted to start it off with one that I specifically asked you to play as well. Because, Matt, I wanted to talk about Haste, Broken Worlds, which I believe was one of the 50 most played demos of the latest Steam Next Fest.
Yes.
And Matt, Haste, Broken Worlds is a game that I want to like so much. I currently have an hour and a half playtime for the demo alone. More than I actually played Monster Hunter this week, if I had to be completely honest. And that, I don't know if I like this game, but I really, really want to like Haste Broken Worlds just because. So basically what this game is a roguelite, but instead of, you know, fighting a bunch hordes of different enemies or, you know, doing Metroidvania platforming, this gives me really big Sonic Adventure energy because you play as our protagonist as she runs through these broken worlds trying to collect shards while she reaches the end of, you know, said level. And kind of as you progress during your instance or your run, you jump to different points of the map where you can, of course, find passive power ups, go to a shop, fight, not fight, but run more difficult courses. And
Mm-hmm.
while I do like the sense of speed, Matt, I have to
Uh-huh.
ask,
Uh-huh.
what do you think of essentially the anti-jump mechanic? Because it seems to be less about jumping and more so your landing position.
I I don't mind it. I do wish that you could manually jump, but I
Mhm.
don't mind the system because of like, what it's trying to do with it. Like I understand what it's trying to do with it.
So basically, to give context to what I'm talking about, um, I feel bad for not knowing the protagonist's name, but essentially every time she jumps, you're able to. She auto jumps whenever she hits a ledge,
Hmm.
and you're able to use the A button to free fall. And mechanically, what you want to do is free fall after your jump, so you're landing at an angle at the next slope. And depending on how you land, you'll get a perfect landing, an okay landing, and of course, if you're not actually landing on the slope going downwards, you might be hit with a bad. You might lose some momentum, and
Hmm.
sometimes you might hit a obstacle and you'll lose some hearts. So I think that was definitely something that caught me off guard when I first started playing, and something I really had to get a feel for. Which, Matt, I'll be honest,
Hmm.
after playing this demo for an hour and a half, I do not have a feel for the landing. But how do you
Uh-huh.
feel about how Haste Broken Worlds plays?
I think specifically with regards to how it plays, I think it plays pretty well. I think the sense of speed is very, very good. I think the kind of like mechanic of wanting to land on like the downward slope so that you can pick up more speed, I think that like makes a lot of sense. But Jaren, I feel like the core of this game is very, very enjoyable to me, but then everything else around it is like not good for me.
Hmm.
Um Jaren, I wish there was some kind of like indicator or kind of like visual aid to tell you like I don't know like how steep a slope is or something,
Right.
or like I feel like I would enjoy this game so much more if it was 2D, which really limits how like good of a I think like interesting of a game it would be, but kind
Yep.
of landing is really weird and I don't I really 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 like I really really hate how blind your jumps are. Um,
Yes.
this being, a kind of like a roguelike, they are, from what I can tell, like, kind of randomly generating the levels in some way. And the amount of times that I've gone over a hill and there isn't anything on the other side, it just happened to be
Yep.
the end of the level, or it's just like a wall, or, it was and this one really bothered me. It was like too far for me to like even make. Um,
Yes.
I that was like such a buzzkill when I was playing this game.
Where I don't know what especially during my first couple of sessions with it.
Hmm.
Um, I also just found, in addition to the points you just made about just the visibility and knowing where you're going to land, I thought that the fact that you're trying to also outrun the level breaking behind you, I also
Hmm.
found that seemed oddly strict and harsh, especially kind of early on in your runs as well, where I don't know. I also do wish. So part of the your runs is you're supposed to collect kind of stars or shards during it, and depending on
Hmm.
how many you collect, that's what your letter grading will be by the end. Plus, that acts as your currency when you get to the shop. I know those are really supposed to dictate how you're supposed to navigate to the level, but again, it was also something I just found issues with was readability, where
Yes.
I would think I was going towards the end or, the proper quote unquote path, only to find myself just jumping off the edge of the level just because
Hmm.
it was really difficult to know where I was going with some of the levels that were generated. Where, again, Matt, Haste, Broken Worlds, I think stylistically, I like how it looks. I do like just that. sense of speed you get, but it's just when I get to the thick of it, I feel like I want to like this game a
Hmm.
lot, but it's unfortunately after an hour and a half with the demo, not for me, but I'm really rooting
Hmm.
for it just because I do see the potential there. And maybe I'll keep an eye out on it just to see how, I don't know, maybe these aren't issues, but maybe if they are addressed, it might be right up my alley.
Yeah, I feel like I would enjoy this game a lot more if it wasn't a roguelike and if it was more
Hmm.
of like a score chase or time attack style
Right.
game where it does have, crafted courses that you are
Yes.
trying to like basically speed run through.
With yeah, I would really enjoy that with just different shortcuts or different
Hmm.
mechanics that you can use to tackle it, and even more risk versus reward placements of stars where
Hmm.
I think, and if they were able to really just design it in a way that it is kind of a gradual step up in terms of difficulty and readability, so
Yeah.
you know exactly what to look out for. I think that
Hmm.
would be
Hmm.
a really more enjoyable experience where you know me, man. I love the lure of a good roguelite, but I don't hate I want to like Haste a lot, but
Hmm. Yeah.
just isn't clicking for me
Yeah.
right
I,
now.
I really am wondering how much of the readability issues are a case of like, it actually being unclear or if this demo just wasn't I guess like you weren't they didn't put in any like instructions because
Right,
there was a
right.
lot of stuff where I was like, oh, this is gonna damage me, but it looks like I should be going for this. Like those like big white shiny beacons in the dark levels. I thought at
Yeah.
first, oh, you know, generally go towards the light is like just standard, gameplay logic, but those are bad for
Hmm.
you. And then I thought the trees would have collision on them, but the top of the trees don't, so you can just go through those, and it just makes a really cool explosion and stuff like that. But yeah, I there's a lot of things in this game that I really hope become better or changed because I
Yes,
the core is very very good to me.
definitely. I love the sense of Matt.
Hmm.
Sometimes I want to go fast, and you
Hmm.
definitely go fast, but unfortunately, I'm hitting too many trees along the
Uh-huh.
way.
Uh-huh.
But Matt, I
Hmm.
talked about a demo that I really wanted to like.
Hmm.
Uh, let's add some positivity here. Matt, what was a demo that you really felt during the Steam Next Fest this time around?
Okay, it's really good that you brought up that caveat because I was gonna go to one that I thought I wanted to like, but
Okay.
I'm gonna go to one that I really did like, which is Shape of Dreams.
Oh, I've heard of this one.
Hmm. Shape of Dreams is an ARPG roguelike. It is very Path of Exile 2 in control scheme where you are moving around an isometric character with like the WASD keys and then you're kind of like aiming your shields. Actually, I guess it's like more like a twin stick shooter now that I am thinking
Hmm.
about it. But this is following the standard road like formula of hey, we're putting you into like this I don't know, like I'm gonna say just like a Hades style arena where you're gonna traverse through this map and fight things, and then at the end you're gonna just like not particularly like Hades, but like every other rogue, like you're gonna like pick a node from where like you're starting or like from where you are, you pick a node that you want to go to, and you're trying to get to a specific node on this map. And I think an interesting thing that they're doing with the nodes is that they're kind of copying the um faster than light style node system where you can travel
Okay.
to any node you want, but coming from one side of the screen pushing over to the other, the nodes will slowly become like unavailable for you to go to. So you can bounce back and forth between nodes that are on like the same like quote unquote tier, as long as it doesn't get taken over by like I think they're just like nightmares. Like this game's lore is very dream based. So
Hmm.
it's like, oh, you're gonna like use like memories, you're gonna use dreams as your powers, and like, oh, there's nightmares coming and they're going to like erase the dreamers or something like that. um but the game itself is actually like I think very very fun. It is a ARPG and controls in the same way as a Path of Exile 2. You are pulling kind of like abilities for your characters. Your characters are all going to start as like a specific class. I think the demo might have all 5, but I only unlocked 3. The 3 that I
Okay.
had were kind of like the kind of sharpshooter, like a dude with like a rifle, the kind of standard melee warrior, and then your standard kind of caster.
Okay.
And all these characters have basically, I think it's 3 or 4 active moves that are kind of like bound to, like right mouse button, like 1, 2, and 3, and then they'll all have a passive and just your standard attack. And you are just gonna use these in the way that you would play like just like any other ARPG. The kind of hook and roguelike element here is that you only start with 2 abilities and like your basic attack and your basic dodge, and you're going to be picking up new abilities along the way. These abilities are things like, hey, like kind of standard stuff that you'd see in a ARPG, where it's like, okay, when you hit this button, your next like X amount of attacks are empowered, or you're gonna rapidly shoot in a line, you're going to create an AoE in this area, and just like general kind of like I want to say like standardish ideas like that. Where it is also going to like kind of play with it is that every skill that you have has these 3 nodes, and as you're going through the levels, you're going to get these modifiers where you can attach them to your skills. So for example, like one of the modifiers would be, hey, when you use a skill, you like get some health back, or when you attach this like modifier to this ability, every single time you do a basic attack, it lowers the cooldown of this ability. Or like, hey, if there is someone on fire, when you use this ability additionally just like shoots like arrows at the person who's on fire. And I think the very, very nice thing is that you can drop these abilities, swap around these modifiers freely as you're playing, which really, really adds, and it makes like progressing through the levels as you get more and more stuff to play with a lot more satisfying. You get a lot of customization in there, and I think the game is like also like a very fair difficulty, which it's really, really nice.
Matt
Mm-hmm.
selling me on this one. Seems right up my alley.
Apparently, it's also had co-op in it. I didn't have anybody to play it with, but
Okay.
yeah, it does seem like it would lend itself very well to co-op, because it seemed like one of the characters I didn't access was a support-based one, which I'm interested in seeing like how that will actually work in the actual co-op, and how that character itself would work if he was playing solo.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That final question. What do you think of just the overall visuals, the aesthetics? Is it up your alley?
Yeah, I think it's like pretty nice. Like it's a lot of honestly kind of like very crystal like visuals, combined with a lot of, I want to say like kind of like that blue purple pastel color palette that you kind of like associate with a lot of like, oh, you're in a dream scene, like this is like, oh, all kind of like blurry and magical and mystical. Like it has a very nice aesthetic to it. Like it's not going to be anything that's going to, I think, blow your mind, but it does have like its own aesthetic that I think it's playing with very nicely.
Okay.
Oh, and I think like very kind of like importantly for this kind of game, the skills and like areas that are going to damage you are all very well like marked. Like it's very clear,
like telegraphed.
Yeah, very well telegraphed. You know what's going to hurt you. You know what's going to be attacking. Like I found the like boss fights in this like very good. Like, oh, it has that feeling of, oh, like 2 seconds before you die, you're gonna die because you can see that they telegraphed it well and that you messed up into this situation.
Okay, fair. That this is also just kind of making me want to jump back into Hades 2 as well.
Has Hades 2 gotten any like substantial updates lately? Or
yes, I believe just a few weeks ago there was like a notable update. Well, it's not 1.0 yet. They're still adding more content, which I don't know. I'm still debating if I want to jump into experience or wait for that package. But Matt, speaking about games that reminded me of other games, Matt, can I interest you in Indonesian sleeping dogs. Because Matt,
Oh, okay.
I played the demo for Axe of Blood, which
Ooh.
the first thing that surprised me, Matt, even though this is a demo, it has achievements.
Oh, that's weird.
Matt, how do you feel about demos having achievements?
Okay, Jared, I have a very important question. Is this like, do the achievements count towards like Axe of Blood actual, or is there Axe of Blood demo, and then Axe of Blood demo has achievements?
Matt, it says Axe of Blood demo has 10 achievements.
Oh,
3 are hidden.
Oh man, that's a you know what? I don't know how. I don't. Okay, I think I'm gonna go on like take a stance here and say I don't like that a demo specifically has achievements.
Matt, it caught me off guard when I was playing this for the first time and an achievement popped up and I thought, wait, this should be illegal. There's something, I don't know, it doesn't feel right, Matt. It doesn't feel right. Where, so Axe of Blood, takes place in this dystopian Indonesia, but it really, as I said, gives off that sleeping dogs, that era of Hong Kong martial arts, feel where, you play as your main character whose name, surprise, slips me, and you're basically out for revenge, and the demo has you, traversing a factory trying to find the big bad, and I believe there's also an arena mode that you can unlock for the demo as well. Where Matt, the reason I say this is Indonesian sleeping dogs is it does have that Arkham counter combat system where even though you have your punches and your kicks, if you see someone throwing an attack towards you, hit Y and then you'll perform your counter. So at its core, I think it feels okay. But my issue, Matt, is I played this on my Steam Deck and I'm not sure if it's optimized for the Steam Deck because some wonky stuff. I can't tell if it's the game itself or it's just running poorly on the Steam Deck because there was instances where, say, someone would hit me, I do the counter, but Matt, I would be facing away from them and they would be behind me and I would be, punching with my counter animation and then they'd be reacting behind me to said counter animation where, it ran kind of poor. So I might install this on my actual desktop just to see how it runs. But I think I played 20 minutes of it. It was, I had to put it down just because of, how clunky it felt on the Steam Deck. Plus, I saw someone pull out a shotgun and I realized, oh, wait, me. I like me a good brawler game. I really loved Midnight Fight Express, which also had a similar fighting system. But Matt, the moment you introduce range weapons there, not a fan. Not a fan. So the moment someone pulled out a shotgun, someone did shoot me with the shotgun, but then I saw a counter notification. But then again, it was really weird on the Steam Deck. So I'll install it on my desktop and report back to see how it reacts to potentially countering bullets. But this is definitely something I'll keep my eye out just because I do like those gritty, brawlers. Or maybe I'll just replay Sleeping Dogs, but definitely something I want to see just because it's kind of true, man. It's why something like Until Then really sticks out to me just because I personally don't see a lot of games, represent or being set in Indonesia or being set in the Philippines. So I do want to, it's that setting that I want to keep my eye out. Plus, from what I did see, it did have that gritty feel. I just hope it plays a bit tighter on my PC.
Honestly, Jared, I'm very surprised. Like, I'm looking at gameplay of this game. I'm very surprised that this has guns in it at all. Like, this, if you didn't say like it was Indonesian sleeping dogs, I would have thought, oh, this is like Indonesian Sifu.
Fair.
And like, to have like guns in that type of game is very surprising to me.
Not a fan of the range weapon. I understand why, but not want to hit people with this. Not pull triggers. But what else did you check out this next fest?
I mean, if we're going with other country versions of games that exist,
okay,
Jaren, can I interest you in Korean Dark Souls.
You mean Lies of P? Wait, no, that was Korean Bloodborne. My apologies, Matt.
Mhm. I played the demo for a game that we've talked about on the show before, or we've talked about it on the show before. I played the demo for the first Berserker Khazhan, and
Matt, the whiplash. I still think about the whiplash from the Game Awards, where technically part of the same universe, but seeing the first Berserker and then that follow the game afterwards, that was like really bright.
Mhm.
Crazy, Matt.
Mhm.
Crazy.
Okay. First of all, I feel like I need to get this out of the way. This is not a realistic graphics style game.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised when I looked at the screenshots.
I actually really, really like the graphical style of this game. This is basically a cel shaded graphical style. It is like a darker version, I think, of Tales of Arise.
I was gonna say it does remind me of Tales of the Rise.
And Jaren, honestly, I think post Sekiro Jaren might really enjoy this game.
Okay.
Because like I said, this is a kind of Souls-like game. But I should have said this is a Korean Sekiro, where this is actually revolving a lot around counters and stamina breaking, or like I guess like stance breaking.
So this is essentially Korean Sekiro.
Yeah, this is Korean Sekiro. You are kind of like, I think like any modern Korean game, you are getting kind of like gear that is the same as the gear you had before, but it has better numbers. Like it is that kind of gear system. There are kind of like sets in the game where it's like, oh, when you're wearing like 2, 3, 4 pieces of this, you get like 2-piece bonus, 3-piece bonus, 4-piece bonus. And it is a Souls-like. You have bonfire equivalents. You have enemies like doing kind of like their own thing. They respawn when you go to the bonfire equivalent. You have a bonfire equivalent before every boss, and I don't know. It plays very well. I think the thing that personally I really like about this, the parry window and the counter window are very generous.
Ooh, Matt, I think you just sold me. I think you just sold me on this.
Like I really like it. You can parry or perfect guard like basically any attack. There are certain attacks that have like I think pretty like decent telegraphing that you must dodge. And I don't know. This game feels very good. It has your standard Souls like like bullshit where, hey, I wonder if I can walk off this ledge, and you just walk off the ledge and you die, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that tracks.
It's one of those games. It's one of those games.
It has like, oh man, Jaren, at the start of this like game, there are these really annoying kind of like monkey like enemies where when they attack and the way that most enemies in this type of game are is that they attack and then they have their opening where you can attack. For these stupid ass monkey things, they're in their opening, like their actual opening to attack them is very short, and they dodge backwards when they when you go to attack.
Don't like that.
Hate it. Hate it. Also, I feel like I haven't like dealt with this kind of game bullshit in a really long time. This is the kind of game where it has the floor where if you walk on it, it breaks and you die.
I hate it. I hate it.
Like, once you see it the first time, like, you'll like catch it like all the time because they're very clear about their telegraphing of, oh, this enemy is in a very easy place for you to, back attack. Very clearly this floor is gonna break away. But I know the game is like I think the game is like very fun. Like I think it's a very fair difficulty for this type of game. A thing that actually really threw me off about the difficulty though is that you pick the difficulty after you beat the first boss, which is weird to me.
That's really strange to me, just because I feel like, what difficulty is the first boss set at? Is that normal? Is it, oh, I want a more easier experience, or is this like the easiest experience? I don't know. It's
I'm gonna
that's
assume
strange
it
to me,
was
man.
yeah. I'm gonna assume it was normal.
Mhm.
But yeah, like this does also have its a skill tree, which I kind of like. It lets at least in that way customize your character, which I like. But
Okay.
yeah, I think if you're looking for a Korean Sekiro experience, the first Berserker Khazhan is definitely a great way to go.
Okay. I'll check. Matt, you sold
Mm-hmm.
me on the demo
Mm-hmm.
at the very
Yo,
least.
those
Do want to check
generous
this out.
parry and those generous parry windows are great.
All you need to tell me, Matt. All you
Mm-hmm.
need to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like, a really hardcore Souls experience. And I wanted something more casual for some of the demos I checked out, just because, as I kind of told you, I was playing on the Steam Deck during the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one demo I downloaded was Streetdog BMX. And this
Uh-huh.
is your classic. Not I wish you were playing as a dog, but
Oh man.
this is just your classic extreme sports BMX game.
Mm-hmm.
The demo has you creating a character and just going around this bike skate park, doing tricks, and it's what you would expect. I think it feels so, Matt, I want to say it feels okay, but initially its default controls um, are a little weird just because. So, for you to prep your bunny hop or your ollie equivalent, you hold down on the right stick and then you let it go for the jump.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to do your tricks, you have to hold one of the shoulder buttons and then flick the right stick. So,
Mm.
I thought that was also kind of weird, something to get used to. But
Mm-hmm.
what was almost a deal breaker for me, Matt, was on default, grind was attached to R1, and I
Oh
don't
no.
like that.
Has to be on the
That feels
triangle button, Jar.
that feels unnatural where once you complete the tutorial, you do unlock the ability to have a more classic, THPS controller scheme with A being your bunny hop and Y being your grind, and then just
Mm-hmm.
having your tricks solely on your right stick. Where once I was able to switch to that control scheme, I was having a lot more fun. I only played for like 20 minutes, but it
Mm-hmm.
was a nice free ride experience where this is definitely something I might, check out down the road just to see what kind of content it gets, the how expansive the create a character is, what type of career progression, if it is similar to, that classic Tony Hawk arcadey 2-minute timer perspective. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, if you're just looking for some simple free riding just to do some cool BMX tricks, I do recommend the Streetdog BMX demo. No frills, but Matt, sometimes that's what you want out of your arcadey
Mm-hmm.
extreme sports game.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt,
Mm-hmm.
any other demos scratching a particular itch for you?
I think that Corebreaker was scratching a very particular itch for me
Hmm.
because this is a. I don't want to say it's like a Mega Man style game, but I think that like the way it controls the kind of like 8-bitty, not 8-bit, like more like 16, 32-bit graphics that it has are all, to me at least, very Mega Man inspired.
Okay.
This is a also a roguelike. It is a roguelike following the kind of the style of something like Binding of Isaac, where it is kind of like, hey, you're going into this one screen, you're doing your video game stuff, and then you're going to the next screen, which is another room, and you're doing more video game stuff.
Okay.
The gameplay style, like I said, is very Mega Man-y. It's a side-scrolling action. You have your jumps, you have your dashes, you have I think very like interestingly they put in like your upward dash is an uppercut, your downward dash is like a ground pound, your side dashes are just like standard invulnerability, and then you have a gun on the kind of a square button equivalent on as a if you're like on a PlayStation controller. And I don't know, I think this is just like a generally very fun like this type of game. But I feel like the really, really weird thing about this game is that its weapons don't feel good.
Oh no.
In that, Jaren, I think the standard weapon that you get, it's kind of just like, I'm gonna be using like a lot of like Mega Man, like kind of like analogies here, but it is
Hmm.
basically like a rapid fire X Buster. This can't charge, so just like if you're holding down the button, it just like shoots three bullets really quick, and I think like that weapon feels very good. My issue is that like how in like most roguelike games there is going to be like your long-term persistent upgrades that you get, and this is a game that has that as well. But very weirdly to me, one of the long-term upgrades that you get is switch weapon, or like carry
Oh,
like a
okay.
second weapon. And while I understand, hey, like get a second weapon is, or like introducing the second weapon sub weapon mechanic is like valid. I think that the price that they set it at initially is very high for what it is,
Hmm.
because it is, I think it was like four currency. Four of like the long term currency. You basically only get one of the long term currency like every run, or every like world, for each of the like how like divide like your roguelike thing into like worlds. You'll basically
Right.
get one every time, one or two. And I think that the opportunity cost of being able to buy your first health upgrade at 2 and then your next health upgrade at 4 makes the sub weapon a very not attractive purchase to me.
Fair. Fair.
And that is along with the fact that the weapons that you can buy during your runs are, of course, randomized. Like that really that's like pretty standard, but they don't feel strong. They have ammo to them where your initial weapon does not. Like your initial weapon has infinite ammo. The weapons that you buy have a fixed amount of ammo, and they like disappear once you spend all your ammo. And the fact that they have a cost and that they don't feel strong per bullet makes them all feel really really bad to me. And
Damn.
yeah, it makes me would make me rather buy the things that give you passive upgrades instead, where it's like, oh, like you get like more health, or like you get some kind of like passive bonus rather than just like a new weapon. And I don't know, I really really hope that during the full release that this is something that gets changed, or like I think the word like I really want to use is like fixed, because
Right.
yeah, it is like very unfortunate that I feel like this part is like really holding it back. And I really hope that like another thing that they decide to do is add more starting weapons. Like, while I think that the rapid fire gun is very good, I think like, hey, for if I'm fighting a boss, I would have rather had like the charging X Buster, or just like Zero's sword, like because those I think fit a lot better for the hit and run style that is kind of standard, I feel like, for that type of game.
Okay.
Whereas the the rapid fire is probably a lot better for the mob enemies that you're fighting along the way. But
Yeah.
the game itself, I think, feels very very good. Other than the kind of lackluster special weapons, I really really like this game.
Okay. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know what it is, Matt, but I feel like for a lot of roguelites in particular that I play, I do find myself just gravitating towards the passives, or even some of
Hmm.
the upgrades in general. I think I tend to stick to passives. Even going back to Avowed, I think
Hmm.
for my companions, I would also just right away pick their passives just because I didn't want to deal with their actives, to be completely
Hmm. Hmm.
honest. But Matt,
Hmm.
I think the last game I played during the Steam Next Fest is probably one I was most surprised at and has become one of my most anticipated releases for the
Oh,
year.
okay.
Because, Matt,
Hmm.
I played the Wheel World demo, and Wheel World is not what I was expecting it to be. Because, Matt,
Hmm.
on at its core, this is a bike racing game where, it has really strong Cartoon Network energy from the character designs, the dialogue.
Hmm.
Um, you, but
Oh,
you
this game.
essentially start off. What's up?
Sorry, I just looked up this game. Yeah. we talked about this game before. Like, had a trailer at Game Awards.
It had a trailer during one, either an Xbox Direct or a Nintendo Direct.
Okay.
So at its core, when we first saw that trailer, we thought, oh, this looks like a fun racing game where you unlock different bike parts, customize your bike. Oh, at one point you're playing, or your bike is just a dude, which, has its own implications. But when you actually start the game, Matt, sit down for this one.
Okay.
This is a lot more Breath of the Wild than I ever expected it to be. Where you play as the protagonist Cat. You wake up in this weird bike land, and you meet your essentially Navi stand-in in this floating skull, and they want you to put together the legendary bike because the legendary rider has abandoned him or something. One of the first things it asks you to do is to make your way to the top of the hill to unlock a shrine, which is a giant bike bell. And when you unlock the shrine, Matt, tell me if you've heard this before, it reveals the map of that region and shows you all the points of interest for you to go to, where you can go there. You might have to race someone, you might have to collect something for someone. But essentially, you're traversing these lands, finding new bike parts, and customizing your bike, all with the goal of unlocking or putting together the legendary bike and finding the legendary rider. Where, Matt, I just find this game so charming. I think the racing feels good. It has the same, a kudo system similar to Burnout, or really just any game that has you building up your boost by doing certain things like drifting or drafting behind someone or taking jumps. So I can definitely see there being a lot of strategy depending on the race of, oh, maybe I need a certain tires or gears, or I need certain loadouts that give me additional boost for doing X or Y. So I think this really left a strong impression on me, but Matt, have to be honest, didn't run the greatest on the Steam Deck. And then I know it gives you the choice of, hey, do you want to run this on, what is it, DX12? Or maybe you want to pick DX11 if DX12 doesn't run well for you, Matt. Both didn't run particularly well on the Steam Deck. So it's one of those, I want to check out the performance on my desktop, but at the same time, even the shaky performance on the Steam Deck still left me with solid impressions, where I might just wait for the full release. But really enjoyed my time with the Wheel World demo. Really surprising, and not just really good vibes all around.
Jaren, okay. One thing about Wheel World that I remember from wherever it was that the trailer played, I remember there being like, it looked like there was a dungeon. Is that a thing, or is that I just misinterpreted what that building was? Or,
I mean, when you find your floating skull friend, you're essentially approaching like these ruins where, Matt, if you end up racing through a dungeon and maybe finding loot, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, okay.
I think that even just by going through the Steam page and scrolling through all the available screenshots, a lot of different locales. And to be honest, the first locale I found was, you're pretty standard foresty. There's some cabins, there's a beach area, but I'm looking through the screenshots and you get like, a lot more villas, you get more dungeon looking things, where I'm really excited to see where this goes because, really liking the color palette specifically as well. So I have really high hopes for Real World and really do like just the demo. So really do recommend checking it out if this sounds like it's up your alley. Matt, anything else up your alley during the Steam Next Fest?
I think I want to kind of quickly touch upon Darkwater. This is a I believe 3-person co-op game. You can play like 1 to 3 people. This is basically just a submarine version of Wings of Icarus. I don't know if you remember that game.
Yeah.
The type of game where, one person is piloting like your submarine, one person is working on the weapons, and then, one person is kind of doing miscellaneous tasks. Like when your submarine gets shot, you have to like repair it. Like it is that sort of kind of like team game.
Man, I'm seeing guns.
Yes. That is one part of the game where you're like, you're doing kind of like submarine to submarine combat. If you're actually like working on the weapons interface, I'm surprised I'm hitting this the second time. It controls a lot like FTL, where it's like, I'm going to use like, my weapon to target their weapons bay or their their water pumps. They can't pump water out of their submarine anymore, or that sort of thing. And then the pilot, like, kind of has its own, like, kind of mini game going on. And, it is just, like, that kind of, like, nice hecticness. But the second part of this game is that it kind of borrows from games like... what is... Jaren, I'm blanking on the name of this game. Like, the one where you... HoloLive played on this game a lot, where they're they're like kind of like going into abandoned buildings. They're getting like
Lethal Company.
Yes, Lethal Company. Like it's that style of a game as well, where
right.
your submarine goes to certain. I think they're just calling them like outposts, and these are randomly generated kind of like areas where you can get resources. There's like some minor enemies in here that you can fight. The minor enemies are all actually very good. They are kind of like, either barnacled sea people or like water animal monstrosities. Like, Jaren, this game has giant enemy crabs, which really good.
Amazing.
Really good.
Amazing.
And I think that if this is like a type of game that you like, this is like, a good version of it. I do unfortunately think that the outposts need a lot of work. I think your inventory is a bit too small for like the stuff that you would want to bring. Like, you only have 6 inventory slots, and personally, I would fill 3 of them just off the jump with like my weapon, my lantern, and like a healing item. Mm-hmm. So the amount of stuff I can bring back is like quite limited, and I think the thing that really burns me is that there's no mini map. Which makes it very confusing to kind of navigate, especially since this game doesn't have like, it's not using very many like different assets, so it's very easy to kind of like, the rooms will look kind of samey, and when you're in room areas that are like like 6 rooms by 6 rooms like in a grid, it becomes very confusing to navigate like back to your submarine when you want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the kind of exploration, like a third of it is, oh no, how do we get back to our thing now?
Right.
But I think overall this game has like a very good structure to it. And once I think hopefully they add a minimap, but like I think it would really, really add to the experience of this game.
Okay, Matt. Mm-hmm. Just take a look at this. This is something I definitely want to play with people. Mm-hmm. Not being published by PlayStack, which, looking at the PlayStack publishing roster, not some bangers here. Seeing Balatro, seeing the Golden Idol games, and even some games that are on my wish list that I want to check out, such as Unbreakable or Unbeatable, which seems to be like this rhythm-based story game where there seems to be a demo, which I'm also going to check out probably sometime soon.
Jaren, I saw Unbeatable as well, and I honestly thought, this is, knowing nothing about this game, this is a Jaren game.
Yep, definitely a Jaren. Matt, I'll report back on it hopefully by next week. But Matt, I'm looking at your list. I know you have a few more, but I got to ask, Monaco 2.
Yes.
Matt, this brings me back. I feel like, I don't know what it is, but I associate the original Monaco with playing Hearthstone in your living room because you had your PC set up there. And I'm not sure why I associate those memories together, but we have... What was the subtitle to the first one? It's like, What's Yours Is Mine?
Yeah, What's Yours Is Mine, yes.
But Matt,
Mhm.
how is the Monaco 2 demo?
Monaco 2 is more Monaco. This is still very French. This is, you still have the mechanics are all basically the same, You still have multiple characters that you can play as. They all have their own kind of specialty. And Jaren, I think I like the first one better, but I think that's because I don't feel like Monaco 2 handled its 2D to 3D transition as
Oh,
well. I found the level design very confusing. I had a hard time like knowing, hey, like where should I go, or trying to get your bearings in this game in the first level, with the first level being multiple floors. And this game having like the standard kind of like fog of war that this game would have, made it kind of like confusing to know where to initially go. And I don't know. I want to give Monaco 2 more tries. Like this is
right.
Monaco was a franchise that I really really liked, and I do see a lot of the DNA still here. But I did have kind of like a rough time playing Monaco 2.
That's a
Mhm.
shame, Matt. Well, I
Mhm.
guess something still to keep an eye out, just
Yeah,
in case.
I think I do. I'm going to give this like more of a try. But that like first experience that I had with Monaco 2 was unfortunately like not the greatest. But
Right.
everything is like still there. But it's just no longer just 2D. You're now working in a whole nother
Right,
like,
right.
D here now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Matt,
Mhm.
can I say something that might give you a tummy ache?
Hmm.
Monaco 1 came out in 2013, and that
Yeah.
gives me a tummy ache.
Yeah. Yeah. Jared, I
Matt,
honestly
I
thought
was
Monaco 1 came out way before that.
fair, fair. Matt also got the notification that 10-year anniversary of Hotline Miami 2, and that makes me feel bad.
Oof. 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 Oh man.
Uh, but Matt, real
Mhm.
quick, I'm also looking at your list. You have, I believe, one or two more games that
Mhm.
worth mentioning.
Mhm. I want to hit Fellowship. Jaren, this is a game I went into thinking I would really like it, and I left realizing, oh man, no, this is not for me, but it's still, I think, pretty good.
Okay, Matt,
hmm hmm
is this oh, this game?
Yes, Jaren, it's
That
this game. Hmm
so what is Fellowship?
Jaren, Fellowship is WoW Pugs the game. um,
Amazing.
this game is basically just 4-man WoW raids, and Jaren, I think I went into it wanting to relive that time that we really enjoyed playing WoW, and I left it realizing, oh man, like, while this game is good, the social interaction and social planning that you need for this is way beyond what I want to put into this game. But I don't know, the gameplay is like pretty fun. It is like your standard kind of WoW raid, but it's limited to 4 people, 2 DPSs, a tank, and a healer. Each of those classes in the current demo has 2 different characters that you can play
Mhm.
as, and they both play kind of like differently. Where like you have your standard tank, and I think the other tank is a dodge tank. You have your standard priest like healer, then you have like a more who's like doing direct heals, and then you have I think it's like a more druid style healer where you're doing kind of like preemptive healing rather than like post healing. Then you have your standard mage DPS, and then you have a melee DPS. And honestly, like I think the game's like pretty fun. Like the roles are very standard in terms of the kind of like MMO triangle. I wonder how fixed the characters are going to be in the actual game, because
Right.
like this being a demo, they give you like the 6 characters that I mentioned, and I'm wondering how much customization those characters are going to get, if any, in the full release. Because I feel like a part of the kind of like rating experience is the customization of your character. And I didn't really see that in the part of the demo that I tried, but I am interested in I'm interested in watching this game from a distance and never actually playing it and being like, this would be fun to play if I could con like 3 other people into playing it with me.
Fair. Fair.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I saw this being talked about, when lurking all the different threads. But yeah, taking a look at it, I thought this might be something for me, but not sure. Not sure. Maybe if we had a party, might sing a different tune, but seems like another successful Steam Next Fest. I wish I played a lot more, but hopefully next time around. Or you know what, Matt? Demos are still out. Maybe if I don't have anything to talk about next week, I'll check out a few more that has caught my eye, because once again, Matt, I wish listed a lot of games this time around as well. But Matt, once again, another Beefy Boy episode, which I have to apologize to you for. So Matt, gotta thank you, as always, for joining me this week and once again editing these Beefy Boy podcasts.
Yo, thanks, man. And, as always, even though Rakush already said it in the first half, I want to thank you for, as always, hosting this episode and, joining me in this Next Fest half of the podcast.
Hey, thanks, man. And Matt, no, we should cut it, but real quick, Matt, gotta thank Shion, and that feels bad. Feels bad, but good luck to Murasaki Shion, and shout out to all the HoloLive talents, and congratulations on HoloLive or HoloFest performances. But Matt, until then, please take it away.
This has been the Mistake Zone, and we're all out of second half Rakush.
Not authorized, Matt. Not authorized.